You meet someone and they treat you right. They're consistent, kind, emotionally available. And at first, it feels good. But then something shifts. You feel bored, distant, almost turned off. So you start pulling away, even though nothing is wrong, and you don't really understand why. So the question is, why does something healthy feel like something you need to escape? It doesn't happen suddenly. It's quiet. At first you're interested. You reply fast. You feel present. But over time, something changes. You start noticing small things. The way they text, the way they show up, the way they care. And somehow it feels like too much. Not because they did anything wrong, but because something inside you shifts. You take longer to reply. You feel relief when plans get canceled. You begin creating distance without saying it out loud. And then comes the confusion, because logically, you know they're good for you, but emotionally, you feel less drawn to them. So you tell yourself things like, maybe they're not the one, maybe I lost feelings, maybe I just need space. But underneath all of that, this isn't about them. It's about what safety feels like to your mind, and more importantly, why your brain doesn't recognize it. You're not broken, and you're not incapable of love. What you're experiencing is a learned pattern. In psychology, it's often linked to avoidant attachment. But instead of labeling it, understand it. Because this didn't come from nowhere. At some point, closeness may have felt overwhelming, or unpredictable, or quietly unsafe. So your brain adapted. It learned that distance equals control, that emotional space equals safety. And now, even when something is healthy, your system doesn't register it as safe. It registers it as unfamiliar, and unfamiliar often feels like danger. Your brain isn't designed to chase happiness. It's designed to avoid threat, and it does this through something called a predictive system. Your mind is constantly asking, what usually happens next? So it builds patterns. If your past taught you that closeness leads to discomfort, your brain expects the pattern to repeat. So when someone gets closer, your brain doesn't say, this is good. It says, this is unfamiliar, be careful. Now here's the deeper part. Healthy relationships are stable. They don't create emotional highs and lows, and because of that, they don't trigger strong dopamine spikes. But if you're used to inconsistency, your brain associates intensity with attraction. So calm starts to feel like boredom. This is a reward miscalibration, where stability feels dull and unpredictability feels exciting. And there's another layer. When someone treats you well, they see you clearly, and that creates vulnerability, because now there's something to lose. So your brain activates a defense. It creates distance, not because you don't care, but because caring feels risky. That's the avoidant mechanism. So how do you work with this without forcing yourself? Not by pushing harder, but by retraining how your brain interprets safety. Pay attention to the moment your interest drops, not after you've already distanced, but when it begins. This builds awareness. It shifts you from reacting to observing. For example, you're about to ignore a message. Pause. Ask yourself, what just changed inside me? When you feel bored or disconnected, don't immediately trust that label. Instead, reframe it. This might be unfamiliar safety, because your brain often misreads calm as lack of attraction. This is called cognitive reappraisal. You're correcting your interpretation. Instead of, I lost feelings, you try, this feels different because it's stable. When you feel like withdrawing, don't force yourself to stay fully. Just stay slightly longer. This gently expands your tolerance for closeness. It's similar to exposure therapy. You're teaching your brain, this is safe. For example, you want to cancel plans. Instead, you go, but give yourself permission to leave early. When you feel distant, your perception changes. Everything feels less meaningful. So don't make decisions in that state. Create a rule. No major decisions during emotional withdrawal. Wait. Let the feeling pass, then reassess. If safety only comes from distance, you'll keep choosing distance. So learn to regulate internally. Journal. Sit with your thoughts. Understand your triggers. Because the more safety you create within, the less threatening closeness becomes. At its core, this pattern is about misreading signals. Your brain sees calm and calls it boring, sees closeness and calls it risk, so it pulls away. But here's the shift. Familiar doesn't mean right, and unfamiliar doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes, what feels like disconnection is actually your mind adjusting to something stable. You don't have to force yourself to feel something you don't, but you also don't have to believe every feeling that tells you to leave, because not all distance is clarity. Sometimes it's just habit, and sometimes the thing you're about to walk away from is the first thing that doesn't require you to run.